Hey there, Tom. How's it going? Thanks for being a patron, and thanks for being willing to do this critique. A couple of things I just wanted to just kind of put forth for you. First of all, I looked back through your comic, and the fact that you kind of started at this point and have gone or gotten to this point, from here to here. Let's get a red on. Is just really awesome. Like, if I were you, I'd be very proud of this, right? It's a huge jump in sort of ability, right? In artistic ability, in clarity, right? Um, so there's a yeah. As far as your characters go and stuff, you had asked about the character specifically. I like the idea of sort of the character that's in it more. The Luke and the Han, right? The character who believes in it, right, and the character that's just in it for the money. Um, if I were you, as far as like story wise, you mentioned trying to finish off this character, or sorry, this story arc and moving forward toward another story. That's kind of my main thing I'd have you do is instead of going on sort of indefinite lengths of a story, right? If that makes sense. Um, Trying to kind of frame your arcs, frame a story in small chunks, and just tackle almost like do short stories, right? Short comic stories as you go. I think that will help. I think the first few stories that we tend to generate as artists, the characters are reflections of ourself in a like almost an uncomfortably similar way, right? Most artists or character designers are putting a piece of themselves in the characters they create, storytellers. But uh, it's almost a novelty, right? When we're starting out. So I would just say go kind of move in that direction. Try and finish off this story where you are, or soon, right? You've mentioned kind of feeling overwhelmed with it and stuff like that. If it involves, a completely fresh start or even just a hiatus where you take a break from telling stories with these characters and come up with new ones and tell short stories there and sort of see the difference and what things you can build off of, right? All right. So that's my ideas story wise. I would say for the character that's like sort of the more the jerk and the in it for the money type character, having them be sort of jaded, right, impulsive and stuff like that is good. I would just try and see if you can arc that, right, or show sort of some redeeming qualities to that, because a character can come off a little bit one note if they're just constantly the jerk, right, the jaded, just in it for the money type character, and it rubs the audience a little bit the wrong way. There needs to be something. It's kind of the opposite of giving your characters flaws because they're too perfect. A character that's too imperfect, we need a reason to root for. So that's just sort of a microcosm of an idea for you. Artistically, obviously, I'd love to see you continue to improve your drawing. So uh, already there's a big jump here, right, where you went from sort of rectangle noodle arms up to something that's a lot stronger. I would work on sort of your perspective, and like here is this is a more detailed drawing, and it shows you've got a good like sense of facial structure and skull and everything, right? I would just I would do as much as you can with perspective, like say bring this torso this way a little bit more, right? And remember to treat the hips as not, or rather the pelvis, right? Not as this shape, right? Where the legs are sticking straight down, but like this, where the legs, as much as this is a socket that moves a lot, are on either side of the leg, and that tells you a lot about sort of how to bend and flex from the pelvis and the legs. And another thing, especially working with a grayscale comic, that I just wanted to kind of look at. First of all, with pages like this one here, I would try and do as much as you can to kind of zoom out. There's a couple of good examples, and it's more kind of areas where you kind of took your time, right? Where, ideally, if we could get like an exposition shot that's kind of like this, where we have, our two characters on one side. Did I say characters? Well, it's in the video now. We've got two characters over here and one over here, right? And we get a good sense of who they are. Maybe for whatever reason, there's a giant, maybe it's lost, and this is a jet engine that's, crashed in the sand next to them. Whatever it is, getting a good sense of placement, right, is nice once we zoom in. Otherwise, if all we ever see is the zoom in, and I realize this is mid-story that I've selected here, but if all we get is sort of zoom ins and characters who are rendered sort of like paper dolls, flat, cutting back and forth, shot, reverse shot, it's a little bit difficult to follow who's where, and to follow the story and everything like that. Places like here, right, it would be good. I would, if I were you, I would kind of practice. Maybe, because this is older, you've progressed a little bit more, but, skull practice and stuff. And if you get to the end of a page and you're not just like tired because you did a lot of work, but exhausted because of the amount of detail in it, it might be worth looking into designing your characters just a little bit more simplistically, right? And that could help. It doesn't mean drawing them worse in any way. It just means reducing the amount of work that you have to do each time. Because, and another aspect of this here, like I'm saying, especially when you have a black and white comic, is you need to have some value structure for clarity. Let's take this panel down here at the bottom. Because your background is white, you've got a white background, and you've got white inside the character, it's hard to see, that's just one example, it's hard to see clarity or contrast between those two things. This panel's a good idea, or it's a good example, right? Because the eyes are the focus. But here the characters are the focus. So even if you're just taking, I'll do this real quick. Even if you're taking a character like this, and I'll use a multiply layer here. It doesn't have to be a long drawn out process. I grab a gray, drop it in, and make this multiply. That should work. Yeah. If I do something like this and then just keep things like the eyes white, and maybe this is too dark, right? But a little bit of variance here, and you kind of start to get, let me lock this. Say this, it's a bit darker here. Or your background is dark, right? And the characters are light and popping off of it. But just right now, it's hard to tell, especially with a lack of background objects, what's background and what's character. A little bit hard to discern, if that makes sense. So hopefully that helps. I would also try and contour around your characters a bit. So by that I mean, with something like these shoulders, they read immediately flat, when it would be nice to not only see like sort of a swoop in here. Let me go back to red so it's easy to see, or orange, whatever I grab. Some natural shoulder shapes to the fabric, but also like an idea that this is cylindrical right here. Right now, unless this material is really like built up to be something that's, unless it actually is sort of a corner that he's able to grab onto here, it doesn't quite read right, and so it kind of bothers the eye. Anyway, that's some thoughts that I had for you. Let me know if you have any questions. Hopefully it was helpful, and hopefully that makes a difference for you. And I'm looking forward to seeing you continue and work with future stories. Thanks a lot.